first of all, for the invitation and for the really great conversation earlier today. I'm very much here to talk about the journey we've had at Royal Court, and that's still, we're very much in the middle of that journey actually still. Before I introduce the Royal Court, just to make sure everyone sort of knows what we do and who we are, I'll talk a little bit about myself, which I don't really enjoy, but I'll try to keep that very brief. I'm from the Netherlands. I've worked in, trained as a master of hotel management schools. I'm supposed to be in hotels and hospitality. Before I finished that school, I really realised I don't want to be there at all. It's a very scary commercial world that I don't like. Now, working in the arts, actually, I am the more commercial person in our organisation, so that's quite a nice place to be, sort of in between. I came to the UK about 8 years ago. Before that, I worked 12 years in a venue in a smaller town, so very much like you would say a rural venue, I guess, where we had lots of really close connections to everyone we worked with, our colleagues, the people who visited the venue, the people who were our suppliers. Then I came to the UK. I worked in the commercial sector for a bit, big hotel chain, very scary, very corporate, and I ran away from that after about a year and a half. And found Royal Court, and the Royal Court has been absolutely amazing. We definitely are really good at doing things wrong, and we're very happy to talk about that. So if you've got any concerns, any feedback, any things that you're like, how did you do that, or why did you do that, do absolutely challenge me. If you've got any questions throughout, feel free to raise your hand or just shout. I'm happy to take those, or at the end, also fine. So we ended up at the Royal Court. And at the Royal Court, we are, as you probably will know, new writing venues, so we run our own venue in Sloane Square. But we also produce all our own work. About 14 shows a year between 2 theatre spaces. Our main space is 380 seats, so that's for us a very big venue, but for some of you very small, for some of you maybe bigger. And we've got a studio theatre upstairs, which is about 100 seats depending on configuration. Then we also take shows on tour, sometimes in the UK, sometimes they stay in the West End, sometimes they go to America, and up in Broadway if we're lucky. Quite often when those shows go off, we hand them over to a more commercial partner. So we are still involved in it, but we're not necessarily there all the time. We started our journey, actually we sort of worked out quite a long time ago. The first time I sort of heard about sustainability at the Court was 2015, 2016, when we set up a small committee, the Green Champions team. I was one of the people who was asked to go in there, and it was new, so it made sense to get the new people buying into it. We had a really great momentum for a lot of day. We were talking about it, and then it sort of went away because we all got really distracted running the building, which happens, and which I think happens to all of us around us. Then in 2018, 2019, we sort of picked that work up again. Our executive producer at the time, Lisa Davies, was a real champion, one of the creative climate leaders, and we started a new series of workshops, and I'll talk about that a bit more. She has now left, and we're now in a position where we have a dedicated person for sustainability. Not full-time, that's me. It's part of my role. Today I'm going to talk about these 3 steps, I think, to break it down a bit. What have we done up to now? Where are we now? And what challenges are we facing? And I think some of those challenges you might be facing as well. And what are the next steps that we are going to take? It's a lot of writing. I'll try to, I've got it in front of me as well as a reminder. Early steps. So I started off, as I said, hospitality. So I was deputy bar and kitchen manager, and I was really concerned about sustainability, and there were some really easy wins. So easy wins, let's talk about easy wins. Removing plastic from the house. So the first step was removing all our plastic water bottles. This was the end of 2017. We had a more conservative audience, I guess, and people would buy plastic water bottles before going into the show. They were doing that everywhere, they were doing that of course as well. We had a water station, but people don't really trust the water that's just in the big urn there. We would sell at least 100 of those bottles every night, and it's great, it's a really great profit, so why not? And I was one of the first people who said, we shouldn't be doing this. And everyone really hated me for that, because there's obviously, first of all, it makes money. It's a great service to our audiences, and everyone was really concerned about people drinking all sorts of cups with water everywhere, and it's going to be an absolute mess. But when I pointed out that people were doing that anyway with a glass of wine or their beer, then that wasn't really a fair argument. We did it anyway, and we, as much as backlash we sort of expected, our audience totally got it. We trained all our staff members, we explained exactly why we were doing it, that it was a sustainable thing, that we didn't want to have that plastic so visible. They bought into it, that was the important step, they bought into it, and they managed to also communicate their message to the audience. And as big as a problem as it was, within a month it actually showed us it was not a problem at all, and everyone was looking at like, why didn't we do this 5 years ago? And the money we lost on it actually wasn't that significant. People were buying our drinks as well, so that was good. That really gave a lot of confidence to not just me, but the whole team to be like, okay, great, we can change things. So let's look within our own area and let's make changes where we can and improve things. We set up a staff forum in early 2018 within the bar and kitchen and sort of talked about what we would like to change. Some people were talking about the chemicals we used or the staff uniforms they were wearing. Lots of different ideas came up. And then we went back to budgets and were like, well, what can we actually deliver? I think a lot of things we learned at that time was that when you make these changes and the sort of easier decisions can actually save money or not cost so much money. And we always had the sort of thinking that the money that we would save in the process we would put back into measures that might cost a little bit of money. So that helped us. We introduced the reusable plastics, which in 2018, not a lot of venues were doing that just yet. We were one of the first venues in London to do that. We very specifically didn't brand those because everyone who did brand them was telling me that they were getting taken away all the time, so we didn't do that. We stopped the full use of plastic water bottles. We didn't have them available at all anymore. That was a really interesting thing with cast, crew, actors who would also have a plastic water bottle backstage. That was a thing back then. Everyone has these amazing like reusable bottles now that they drag around with them, but not back then. And we, at one of our company managers, she really bought into it. And she's like, great, we're going at the start of the show, we're going to buy these bottles, the Royal Corporate paid for it, everyone gets one of the bottles, and they'll use it for the whole run. Great, so that was solved. Like I said, the water station was plastic cups, glassware. Any disposable products that we were still using, a sort of abbreviated was going to be the best option we could get. So we're talking about all the sort of really PLA cups, bamboo cups, all those sort of things. We changed coffee suppliers, and we actually found a supplier who almost sold themselves on the idea of sustainability rather than the coffee, which was really important to us at the time. And the first time we had to sort of revisit our beer contract. It was the first contract we looked at. For the first time we went out with the brief not being we want the best, cheapest deal, we want the most sustainable deal. And we were talking to AB InBev, Heineken, those sort of big players. They didn't get it at all. That was really challenging. They were all talking about sort of their big corporate spiel that they have about, oh, but we put money into this or money into this, but if no one could actually show us carbon footprints or talk to us about how they were going to actively make a change there. But that was really great to these start these conversations. We introduced waste streams. We only had 2 at the court at the time. It was either recyclable or non-recyclable. That's grown quite a bit since then. And the really exciting thing in 2018 we did, we are a small commercial entity within a charity, our catering organisation. We have our own board and we have to report to that every quarter, just as we report to the CEO of the theatre, our artistic director. And we started a new way of reporting that includes sustainability, and it's actually now grown into a separate report on sustainability within the catering operation. And that was very much just to keep me going and to make sure people would help me to account and say, what did you actually achieve? So that was a really helpful tool. It's 2019, and it was we were more thinking about strategy then. And in 2019, actually, we had a really great connection with the rest of our building, and our at the time executive producer Lucy Davis had gone away on a really big course and was one of the creative climate leaders. And we declared the climate emergency that you were talking about earlier on. And I think that there was a group of theatres who did that, not just us. And I think that was quite a momentous moment for us as an organisation, because there were already people internally who started to buy into the changes we were making. Other departments who were stepping up and saying, we want to do more. I think that the bar and kitchen needs to do more. There were people coming to me, I was running the bar and kitchen at that time, and saying, you need to become vegan, everything needs to be vegan, there's no more meat in this building. It was quite sort of don't want to say Extinction Rebellion, but some people had really strong views. So we agreed as a building, let's sit down and organise another forum and give everyone in the building an opportunity to talk to us and say what's important to them. And we actually, and we'll get to that a bit later when we get to the actions, but we broke that down in different groups, different workshops, and we got people to small groups throughout the organisation engaged with that. And it was really eye-opening that people with really strong views who were in a production team were then talking to people in our kitchen and actually could understand why not the whole menu could be vegetarian, but people in the kitchen could also really understand their concerns and see new opportunities for change. So that was really great to connect cross-departmentally there. We started a really exciting project with Small World Consulting, the company that Mike Berners-Lee runs, which was basically going to help us to calculate the carbon cost of our menu. We started with the food menu and then later on going to the drinks menu, and we had a real sort of ideal version of that where we wouldn't charge people in money but in climate points, and they could make decisions based on how sustainable the item was they were buying and be charged for that. We got into the pandemic. You can already see that there's a big gap coming up there, and that's the pandemic. So that never materialized, and that's something that's really high up on the wish list to actually get to that partnership again and get that off the ground. But educating audiences, that's definitely always been a really important part of the journey. We've done that up to this point. We are continuing to do that because I think it's really with all these things, obviously staff buy-in, but also your audience buy-in, and I know it's come up in other conversations as well, that a really strong opportunity the arts has is to educate people and to connect with our audiences, and that's why we want to make sure we try to do that every step of the way. And then we continue to work with our suppliers. So the reason I'm talking here today actually is that one of my suppliers is connected to the house network, and therefore was like, oh, maybe you should chat to Robert. And I was like, oh, great. So it's really good to see how that network can grow quite quickly, and if you find the right people around you, like in this case our wine supplier, it can really help you to link up with other really good sustainable partners or really good other opportunities. And then we got to 2022 where we are sort of call it refocusing. Really exciting, we appointed a head of operations sustainability, i.e. me. Basically means my role has moved on from just running the bar and kitchen to running the operations. That basically happened during COVID. I was the person who lived close and had the key to the building. So it was a no-brainer that I would open the door if someone had to get in to make sure that the building didn't collapse. I actually was really interested in the operational side of venues and slowly moved into that. And sustainability has been very much a personal passion for me. Passion is a weird word for that. And that sort of started in 2017. Influenced by the world, things around me, people around me, and me being really depressed and negative around it, and being like, it's all going in the wrong direction. But actually thinking about what I can actually do within my own power. And I was really lucky that when I had my appraisal in 2021, and I voiced my unhappiness with where we got to and how much we haven't done yet, that my line manager actually said, well, why didn't you go and do that? So that was really great. As much as it's a really big task, it's also exciting for it to be set in a role somewhere and to have someone who we can hold to account to carry that on. We have, obviously, we talked about transitioning to carbon net zero in 2019 through 2020. That was on the slides. We haven't done that. That was one of the big actions because everyone's asking me, what's the first thing you're going to do? The first thing is not actually transitioning to carbon net zero. I've already said to some people the first thing is not turning the heating on. The first thing I did was turn the air conditioning off and say, let's just pause for a little bit. We're at a really great point in time now where the weather for us is perfect where we are based. It's warm enough to not have heating yet, and it's cold enough to no longer have air conditioning. I see my colleagues sort of slowly layering up, so we're getting to the point where the heating will go on at some point, but I want them to layer up. I mean, I've got 3 layers today. If I get to the 4th layer, I'll probably start turning the heating on. But yeah, it's just about, I think, what I used to see a lot in our building is people walking around in t-shirts and saying it wasn't warm enough, and whereas before our messaging was like, oh, absolutely, we are running this building, we're going to make sure you're all comfortable because we want you to be really happy. The messaging now is maybe wear a jumper first, and then we'll turn the heating on in a couple of weeks' time. Like, we're really trying to get people to understand why we're doing this. And that's much because everyone loves our agenda, and the fact that Rollcore tries to be really sustainable, but making your own sacrifice is a very different thing, like giving up that takeaway cup from Nero next door. That's not really something that people want to do. But we're getting there, so like, it's not easy. I'm going to move on. Current challenges. Yeah, that is the sort of, I think, the depressing slide, but that's also just, for me, it's a really positive and powerful thing as well, because it just shows us where we are, and I think as a group here we probably have similar challenges, and if you don't have those, then please also tell me, because I'm really excited to hear why you haven't got them or how you've dealt with it. But we're recovering from COVID, and I was talking to someone else before, the COVID recovery, I think from an audience perspective, I hear more and more that people feel that it's done and dusted and then it's all behind them. They've been going to the West End for a while, they've come to our venue maybe 2 or 3 times already, seen the shows, and it all feels quite normal. Whereas our organisation has really changed. The way we make theatres changed, the way we run our operations has really changed. I've never cancelled as many shows as I have the last 6 months, as in the 8 years I worked at the Court before that. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous how comfortable we are now pulling a show or just cancelling a night because something's not right. That's definitely an effect of COVID. The art sector's changed, and I think if you're recruiting now, you will see that it's quite difficult to recruit for certain roles. Our production team is really struggling there. We recently recruited someone in development. We had 300 applicants. Our head of production recruited a deputy sound and had 2 applicants who were both offered better jobs elsewhere. So yeah, that went really quick. And I think also the audience behaviour has really changed. We see that people who are very much in the routine of, I get up, I go to work, I'll hang around town, I'll have dinner or a drink somewhere, and then I'll go do a fun activity, and then I'll go home. Those people don't really do that anymore, for us at least. We see that they actually need to think about, I'm going to travel into town because maybe they're working from home, maybe they only come into town 3 or 4 days a week. There is this sort of thing everyone in our area says that Thursday has to come in Friday. That's definitely a thing. Like Friday nights used to be really busy in our bar, and Friday nights is actually where we're now looking around and saying, well, we can hold a meeting here because there's just no one there. Those are things that are really, just as much as it's a change, it feels really unnatural, and we're a bit uncomfortable about what we're going to do with that. It's quite scary to have those sort of really certainties that were always there, have those seen move away. There is also, I think that the auditors are coming back, like that's also important to say, like, and I think everyone sees that, people are keen to come out again. The decisions they make around their journey and around their going out is just very different. And then limited resources, I mean, you've already been complaining about the fact that there's no staff left. If you work in hospitality, it's even worse. We're really lucky. We hire out-of-work actors mainly in our bar and kitchen. And it's absolutely brilliant because it's not brilliant. There's always a lot of out-of-work actors. That's not a good thing. No, I should rephrase that. They are really passionate about the Royal Court, about the industry, about their job. And I personally think the skill of working in a bar and kitchen, a lot of those skills can be taught quite easily. It's more about how you deal with people and how welcoming you can be and those sort of things. And a lot of those actors are really brilliant at that because they know how to play a part, so they can fake it all. The kitchen actually, just completely separate, but because I've got a very big passion for hospitality as well, the kitchen that we run at the moment, we ended up with no chefs after COVID. Because we are a small commercial entity within a charity, the first thing we had to do when COVID hit was protect the charity and basically close the commercial entity. Because we were really brilliant that we're making lots of money for the Royal Court to get back to the stage, but all that money needs to be paid back, and we didn't have that money to give to our staff anymore, it had to be paid back to the charity. So any profit we make goes back to the charity straight away, which is absolutely brilliant, that's what it's for. But it did leave us in a situation that we had to make a decision early on about protecting the core staff and letting go of the rest. Really exciting also that we got to the point in 2021, mid-2021, where everyone who had been terminated, who had to leave the Royal Court, unfortunately, everyone who worked in a commercial company had been offered their job again, and most of those people have come back. So that's a really positive outcome of COVID, a really exciting thing there. But we were in a position that none of our chefs were available anymore because that market had really changed. I'm going for Brexit, COVID, a combination of that. We now have a brilliant flexible team of people who already worked in our bar and kitchen, in the bar and restaurant, who once worked at Pret, who once worked at Domino's, who once did some KPing or some chefing, and we've built a pool of people, and together with some external help, we've now actually relaunched the kitchen offer that we deliver ourselves without having those sort of like full-time chefs available. We had a really good meeting with that team actually because it's a real collaborative effort. They help us build the menu, They help us think about how we deliver this, and we work with an external food safety company to make sure we stick to all the rules and everything is like audited and going well. But they're really excited about it, and we now actually had a conversation with them about, do they want to become chefs, and does that now need to become the set structure where we don't go back to finding chefs again, but we're going to further educate them, give them opportunities to learn all these skills and be our new kitchen team. But anyway, that's very simple. So limited resources and finding a way to deal with that, I guess. The cost of living and energy prices, and that's for us is really difficult. We have our £12 Monday tickets, and we also are very aware that our price points need to be really accessible. I was at another venue, I won't mention it, but I was really shocked to see the price of their products. And I think as venues, as much as we have a responsibility to keep ourselves afloat, we also have a responsibility to remain affordable and accessible. That is a really big challenge, and going into these two topics, cost of living prices and energy prices, that's a bigger challenge than ever. And it's very much connected obviously to our global world, to the pandemic, to the climate emergency. And it's hard to, because for us in an organisation it's really easy to just increase the prices, but it's really hard to find the right solution and sort of medium for that. And then the increased impact of climate change. I mean, yesterday we had to hold our matinee performance because of the amount of water that was trickling into our building. And that's once again, that's something that's happened 3 times to us since we reopened after the pandemic. Up to that point it happened twice in 20 years. So that's just to put into perspective that we are definitely seeing a really big change there. It's not really because the building's changed, it's just because the amount of water coming out of the sky has really changed. And we're finding ways through that. Okay. Zero harm. Just make sure I didn't skip one. No. So we've come up with a big word, zero harm. And I think saying out there straight away, we try to achieve zero harm in the way we work, but we're also very much acknowledging that there is always harm. I think the business of theatre making is also about provoking, it's about challenging things, and in that process things or people do get harmed from time to time. We don't necessarily set out to do that, but there is harm. But there is an aim to get to zero harm, and under zero harm we've got a whole umbrella of different topics that would fall there. So sustainability, what we're talking about today, is definitely one of them. We currently are in a really big process that we started almost 2 years ago with a company called the What If Experiment, and that's about anti-racist work, anti-racism work. And it basically involves us as an organisation saying we are a racist organisation. That was very difficult to get to that point, but we had to acknowledge the power structures that exist in the UK, in the world, and it's very connected to climate justice. That's why it comes up here. And that structure, how that's created a world in which we thrive and other people don't necessarily thrive. That process, we're almost getting to the end of the 2-year start of that. We've acknowledged that, we've acknowledged the harm we've caused, and we're now in the process of training ourselves. We've done a lot of training, we've just started training with the frontline teams on how we call out racism, how we recognise it ourselves and our audiences. And one of the things that's going to come out of this is a code of conduct that everyone in our organisation has already signed up to, but we're about to open that up to the public as well. So that will put us in a position where if you buy a ticket and you are not very nice to one of the other patrons or our staff, we don't want you to be in our venue anymore. That's a really straightforward way of saying it. This is not about us becoming inaccessible and throwing people out and say things we don't want to hear. This is about us trying to create a safe space in which people feel welcome, respected, equal, and where there's obviously still space for debate. I think it's important. Gender awareness training, that's a thing we're doing all the time. We're about to open a show with lots of drag artists, so that's also a sort of placeholder moment for us, like, oh, actually we need to make sure we get this right. We've been talking about toilet signage for the last 1.5 years. If anyone needs to talk about toilet signage at any point, I'm your man. We've gone through all the versions of it, and we've had all the different sides of feedback on it, varying from safety in the space to having individual cubicles for everyone. We need to get some really practical help from the Theatre Green Group people and lots of money from the Arts Council to just strip out the toilets and start from scratch. We can make them sustainable and we can make people feel safer in it as well. Accessibility and inclusion, that's actually a really big topic. Being in an old venue, our building is from 1800 to 88, that can be a challenge. We've had an amazing refurb at the end of the 90s, but if you sort of work out in your head, that's almost 25 years ago now, so everything we've done in that refurb is about to come to the end of its life. Lifts are breaking down. We all have similar issues I'm going to soon. And then this is very much an internal thing, but we've sort of looked at the way we deal with people who are unhappy in our organisation. And we're not really good at handling that well. We've been very open about that. We're really great at having conversations with people and sorting things out, but once it gets to the next level, then all of a sudden it's very difficult for people to get the support they need. So we've completely revamped our grievance and disciplinary procedures in the process. Mental health and well-being, that's I think coming out of COVID, that's been a really interesting topic. Like lots of people started conversations early on in COVID, I don't know if that was the same for you. We were at home and we were like, we had like a bake-off thing going at the road. It was really exciting. We would all like get on Zoom and bake something at the same time and talk about it. It's absolutely brilliant. But lots of people were having meetings, and I know especially in the freelance community, which extends way beyond London as well, we're having meetings about mental health and well-being, and when the theatres would reopen, us not wanting to go back to what we were doing before. Because just as passionate as we all were about the way we were making theatre, it did feel, once we finally slowed down, that was all quite a lot. And lots of people were really enjoying the new work-life balance and the fact that they had time at home and sort of rethinking priorities in life. Really acknowledge that, and it was very difficult. I think we're still working through that because the freelance community has really changed the way theatres work and work's made has really changed. But one of the things we've now finally done is we have one mental health first aider. We now have actually trained the whole cohort of mental health first aiders, and we're about to roll that out to basically make sure that everyone who's in a duty managing, senior managing, any sort of keeping the building running capacity, that all those people are part of that network. So we always have mental health first aiders on site. And that's actually, both for staff and audiences, we've already had really good use of these resources. And all of that is trying to lead to a more positive company culture, and hopefully also to a company culture where people together are happy to tackle these issues. A lot of the work we are doing in these different topics is cross-departmental, is work groups, is people who meet up. I think everyone today has voiced that in whatever way. This is not top-down, this is all bottom-up, and it's very much cross-departmental and making sure that people buy into that. This is a very sort of big headline overview, but the fields of influence are on the back of the UN. They've set 17 fields of influence, and we've not taken all 17 because there's a couple in there that as important as they are, that don't necessarily relate to the work World Court's doing. So some of those are, for example, no poverty, zero hunger, clean water. Those are not really things that affect our business that much. But all these other topics do. We've basically gone through those, and we built a sustainability policy which ran from 18 to 22. So we're getting to the end of that sustainability plan, and that sort of sits behind the work we do in our venue. And some of that has got a real link to actual actions. I'm just looking at one now. So, quality education, for example, that's a really easy one. We've got an open court department that works with schools, that works with other projects we do locally. That's really easy to sort of link that up and look at what our influence is there. We've got good health and well-being. That's a great one. I think it was Victoria, you mentioned the warm spaces scheme. Yeah, I think you brought it up. That's one of the things we recently got connected to, and we're going to roll that out. And brilliantly for us, that's got a link with the Ukrainian community in London as well, so we can also work on some other really big topics there. Sorry? Absolutely. So yeah, we will, yeah. And I think when we're talking about putting the heating on, that's the point there is, yes, we will put the heating on. We wait for as long as we can get away with it. We used to get our heating, when we talk about the auditorium, we used to heat our auditoriums to about 20.5 to 21 degrees. We are dropping that down to 18. That's sort of what WHO advises us to do. And it's a real great experiment because everyone in our building is very against it, very scared of it, but is buying into trying it. So it's very much about seeing the response to that. And you know, Also, if that doesn't work, if people do become too uncomfortable, then we need to act. The rocket has got a history because it was in Dominic Cook's time actually. He would turn the heating off because he wanted the audience to feel uncomfortable in the space, so they would really pay attention to the place. I mean, that's an angle you can always use, I guess. It's really interesting. Don't tell Dominic Cook I said that, by the way. Yeah, so these fields of influence, and I can go through all of them, but I won't do that because I think that's going to take up a lot of time, and I've got lots of time to talk, but I won't keep you that long. That's very boring. So we get to the next steps, the practical solutions that we're now looking at. So for us, it's about engaging the team, audience, and stakeholders. So I think we already also discussed that in different versions. That having buy-in from the start, working bottom up, is really important. We opened a series. So we opened an outdoor bar in 2020, first year of the pandemic. It was tiny. It was quite funny because we had a set on stage. And we were still in that stage, but you probably also were, where you couldn't react to the building properly, and sometimes you would go in, and we worked with a couple of volunteers from within the organisation who were on furlough. It's all very odd. And we basically took parts of the set apart and built a shed out of it, and we put that in the square, and that became a small bar. And it wasn't just about selling drinks, it was very much about people being able to come to the Royal Court. We had lots of writers visit us because it was just a space for them to connect. And nobody was allowed in the venue. We were only allowed to go in to collect stock and then leave it again. It was very strange. That tiny bar in 2020 grew into a project that took up the entirety of Sloane Square that we ran in summer 21 to summer 22. And in 22 we were in a really great position that we engaged with the council. We now have a license to do this for the next 10 years. So that's a great thing that came out of the pandemic, using a really nice public space to have a great offer. And we worked with 3 other commercial restaurants and bars on the square, and we sort of delivered our project with our stage team, who have got great skills in designing these things and building these things. And we operate our own bar, and they operate their own bars. And we try to design it in a way that our bar is the best one, of course. We have all the money coming in. The great thing there was, I think that's the best learning opportunity for us. Like, we've seen once again what it's like to work with these really commercial partners. We were very much doing this based on trust and friendship and working together. And I kept getting emails from people saying, when is there going to be a contract? I'm like, do we need a contract? We're just helping you, you pay us and it's fine. That was like a real interesting way of working. We did also see, because all these operators were talking about getting big heaters in, and it was all very exciting, getting quite carried away with it all. And we said from the start, we won't have heaters, we'll have blankets. We operated the bar last winter when people were really willing to sit outside with just blankets. There were no heaters. We did actually have some of our lighting, we changed it to be like orangey red, so people would think there were heaters. And once they had bought their mulled wine, they realised that was just the mulled wine that was hot and there were no heaters. But no, blankets and hot water bottles were absolutely amazing, and it was really about showing the other operators that you can do that. And the next step of that was us talking to the people who own the land, because very big commercial partner, Cadogan, who owns the estate, and asking them to actually write a ban into their legislation of these heaters. They already have a ban up to a certain point, but we want them to fully ban heaters. So we're having those conversations now. So it's about further engaging other people, and now we have got power, and now we have got access to these networks. It's great to try to lobby and campaign to have these small wins. It's not going to do a lot in the grand scheme of things. There's no more heaters in the Royal Borough in Chelsea. But it's a great start, and if someone else sees that and picks it up and spreads it over London and then over the UK, and who knows, like maybe we actually will make a big impact further down the line. So I think that goes back to the small changes we can make within our own environment can have a real big impact if other people also get excited and pick things up. Carbon literacy. We went to Home. I mean, it's important to talk about Home. They did a great job. They delivered in-house carbon literacy training to lots of people for different venues, and I think some of you will have done it, or people in your venues will have done it. It's absolutely brilliant, and we're now in the process of going on the training to be trainers and then roll that out in our venue. And once again, hopefully also engage our networks in doing that and talk to other businesses and offer them opportunities to be part of that. The Theatre Green Books, we've been super helpful, like the different versions. I know our production department was involved in conversations around creating it. is now actively using it and is making an impact there. We are starting to introduce the operations and building one as well. And I think it just helps the conversation for us. We need to get so many different people aligned and motivated on this topic, and the Green Book and the tools that our providers, I'm trying to sell it a little bit for you, are really helpful for us. Links very much to procurement and supply chain as well. Obviously, we talked about that a bit before, the other stakeholders, the suppliers, and the conversations we had 5 years ago are very different from the conversations we're having today. We partner with Borrow Wine, Sustainable Wine Solutions. That's that partner that I talked about that brought me here today. They've been really brilliant at sort of understanding what we want in a wine supplier. Our previous wine supplier was very much saying, well, the wine market is not ready for what you want for another 15 years. And it was really great to actually find out that someone was already doing it. So that was just their view, I guess. And we finally, this summer, managed to fully get rid of the big international beer brands. That's something I'm really proud of. Because it's really easy to get a big contract in. Everyone who deals with sort of beer or booze contracts will know that the big brands will put cash into your venue either through marketing or direct cash or free stock. And the smaller partners find that more difficult to do. And it's a real privileged position to be in, to be able to actually make that change. I'm very aware of that. But it is really great to also at the same time be able to say that you no longer take the money from Heineken, you can just do whatever you want. That's really liberating, and my rep, as much as he introduced me to one of these brands, being like, you should have this niche brand on your bar as well, alongside your products. And when I told him the main products were going to go and that was going to become our new brand, he was absolutely shocked, and it was like, I can't do this through my company. But it was a long conversation, we eventually got there. Waste management, we talked about that. I think everyone these days is very clued up on sorting out waste, and I think operationally is still a challenge making sure everything goes in the right bin. But once again, it's a starting point on the learning journey. And reducing energy and water usage, that's been really, I mean, that is just a really big thing, and that's why I'm so adamant about keeping the heating off as long as I can. Obviously, the saving to the planet and the environment is really big there, but also the money that we're spending on it, especially with prices skyrocketing. And I think it's about perception. Like, my living room is always, that's not true. Since 2017, my living room's been at 18 degrees in the winter, and it's absolutely fine. The first year, it's my wife who started this, I have to say that as well, so I'm not this amazing climate activist, she is. I'm just standing on her half. No, she was the one who said, we need to do this, WHO, we have to stick to that, and I was like, oh, that's going to be very uncomfortable, and it absolutely was. The first month it was horrible, and after that, I don't feel it anymore. It's something you get used to really quickly, and that's what I really hope to show my colleagues, that they will get used to it. And if they see it works at work, they can make that saving at home as well. So it's a win-win for them in that sense. We were really lucky with water usage, very, very separate. But we were lucky, we got audited by Thames Water. And apparently this is a thing they do. They go around venues. It's a very small team, it's a handful of people. They go around commercial organisations or charities. They will go into your venue and they will literally survey you from top to bottom and then give you a big report of what you need to change. And depending on the severity of the issues they find, you get given different timescales to fix it. The most severe issue we were given had 3 months, and the least severe, I think, 1 or 2 years. That happened just before COVID, and we were really upset about this and got like legal people and everything involved. And it turned out they have the power to do this, and most people are just lucky now because it's such a small team that they never get to you. But they got to us. And the main thing they do is making sure that you reduce your water and that you have a water-safe building. So all of you will be doing Legionella things in your building already anyway, which is brilliant, and we were doing those as well. But we had the old dad lag, we had the old thing in our system that wasn't perfect, and they helped us to get that perfect and spend the money on that. But the other thing that was really good coming out of that is that they actually enforced flow restrictions on every single outlet in the building. They go through the whole building and they test the outlet of each tap. And if there's too much water coming out per second, they measure it with a really simple, it's like a funnel, it's a really simple tool. If there's too much water coming out, they'll say you need to put a flow restrictor on that. And it's just a little thing you put in front of the tap. It doesn't cost a lot. But because we were forced to do that, we actually have a way more sustainable building now that uses a lot less water. And that's something that yes, we would have probably done the obvious taps, but we were now actually forced to do that throughout the whole building and really think about it. This whole project was like 20 to 30k. Like, it was a lot of money that we didn't want to spend, but because we had to, it's now leading to a really good impact actually. And in recycling props, furniture and equipment, really brilliant actually that we always used to buy stuff off the old sets, which we actually still do. It's quite exciting if there is a plane with like a really nice sofa or something on. Literally the day it opens, there's all these emails going to stage management like, it's going to be on sale, can I get it? Like, everyone's trying to buy out the old stuff. We are really good, I think, like, we've got a really strong stage management team who's really good at making sure things always get a second life. And this is not in writing yet, but we are almost at a point where either something you see on stage has been reused or will be reused. And we're just working on getting more stats out of what we're actually achieving, but sort of knowing from how much we get to buy coming out of stages or is being given away to other venues. Yeah, we're doing quite well there. That's it. I finished talking. I know that was really long, so I just wanted, in case anyone has any questions or does want to share anything, I'll open that up to you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So do you, I think, are you part of the London Theatre Consortium? Do you work, do you work in collaboration with other venues to do similar policies?
We do, yeah. So our previous executive producer, Lucy Davis, who left us and is now at Young Vic, also an LTC, was head of LTC for most of the time that this ran and a lot of this work started up. So a lot of this is interconnected with other venues. I know that's very recent. There's now 2 different pilot projects looking into a shared storage space between not just LTC but other London venues as well. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of scope. I don't think everything is working that interconnected yet, because the main challenge we always faced when it comes to contracts, that most people are very reluctant to be that open, that they share the information, share the really good deal they get from their suppliers. And equally, some people are just in contracts that they don't want to give up because they love the people so much. I know our theatre manager, where she buys her ice creams, is just a great place, and she's never going to give that up, even though I've got another 20 brands lined up who are absolutely amazing. So there's always some challenges there. Some things take time. We, for example, our cleaning contract was something we wanted to make sure our cleaners got paid London living wage. Because even though we're not signed up to the London living wage scheme, we do pay everyone London living wage in our venue. And the cleaners, they were the only people who didn't get London living wage. And our cleaning company couldn't do that with us, so we had to wait until we came out of the contract. And now we've done that a couple of weeks ago. And we're now with a new company, which has taken on the old cleaners, but on contracts that actually provides them with a better wage. So there are ways of doing it.
Sorry, can I ask a supplementary conversation? Did you also talk to the cleaning company about the sustainability of the products they were using?
Absolutely, yeah. And that was a step we already took a while ago, where we sort of moved a lot of those products over, and the new cleaning company actually brought in a whole new set of products that is even better than the ones we had. When we were at home, it was a really great system, the two-can system we looked at, where some of you might know it, but you basically salt and water and you make your own chemical out of that. It's a very sustainable product, which we were about to install, and then COVID hit, and I think that also explaining that gap. That was one of those things, like use single-use plastics and blue roll. We really got rid of that all. Like, we were really good at it, and then after COVID, we had to bring a lot of those things back for that time. And then you go to that second wave of trying to do that again. So that's, for example, the chemicals was a good example of that, where we had to, for a bit, use all those quite harsh, annoying chemicals again, and now we've made that change again to the better ones. Yeah.
I know this isn't the main point at all, but it doesn't half help to convince people that the financial savings are a good reason for doing many of the things that you talk about. And I just wonder whether you've done any monitoring of that side of it, in terms of the turning down the heating and so on.
For us, that's a really good question. For us to see the monetary savings of those actions is slightly too early. We need 1 or 2 more months of data to report on that. So anything I say on reducing heating is comparing it to a pre-pandemic level, which is also quite skewed because we use our building in a different way. So I'm slightly hesitant to report on that. I know from from me being the person who physically controls those systems, that I've not turned them on as much as before. So I know in that sense that there is a massive saving, because I know how long they've been running for in comparison to beforehand. But how that turns into money, I've not seen that yet. From within the catering company, I know that the saving that we did make, that because we basically, the way we approach this, we try to reach a certain profit, so we would still reach the same profit, knowing that in some areas we would make more money, or we would save more money, that was then used to either lower prices, or we are quite good at selecting certain audiences and offering them extra discounted deals or those sort of things. So that money didn't actually come out at the end, that money was just used throughout the process to give something back, if that makes sense. But yeah, but that was definitely visible. That's it. Great, thanks so much for your time.